Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, and I am coming back yet again another week of my comic book countdown, which is my way of shaping my notes on my comic book thoughts about the comics I read, my subjective how much did I enjoy each comic list. And this week there were 13 comics that I got from this past Wednesday from the comic book shop, new stuff. And it was overall an extremely good week of comic book reading. And I'd say at least 5, if not 6 of these comics could have easily been a number one comic on my lists in any given week. But they all came out this week, and I had a fantastic week reading them. On the other hand, there were a few comics I read that were real drudgery. So that's why they came in at the bottom, like Black Knight, number 2. I'm putting in at number 13. Love that cover, actually. And I really liked the idea of the Black Knight with the enchanted black sword that is keeping him alive and perhaps drawing on negativity in some way, or perhaps leading him on a negative path even as he tries to become a hero. But between the artwork and the script, I don't know which to blame more. It just didn't feel very well focused, the story. I found the artwork kind of ugly, and that's just a matter of taste, I guess. And it might have been partially the coloring, but I didn't feel sucked in at all with the story. I felt like I was kind of forcing my way through it. The artist could have positioned his characters in more dynamic ways and drawn us into, like this page here. Where are you supposed to look? How do you guide the eye on a page like that? But also maybe the Cy Spurrier, who's normally a writer I like quite a lot. A lot of writers I like a lot when they end up at Marvel, I don't like them so much. So I don't know if that's on the editors at Marvel or me or what. But the writers just seem to be trying to throw a lot of different stuff at us, and it just felt not very orderly or compelling. I wasn't drawn through it. So I put it at number 13. What I would have thought would have been in my bottom book, which I'm going to keep getting no matter what, is The Eternals, at least as long as Isaac Ribic is the artist on this. Because I have some affection for The Eternals as a concept, and I really enjoy seeing Ribic draw them. Although in this issue, there were 2 characters he drew to look almost identical. I think one is named Kingo and one is named Droog. And I thought Droog was like one of the main bad guys in the original Jack Kirby books. But anyway, that was a weird artistic choice, I felt. But the main thing that's the head scratcher here is, what is writer Kieran Gillen up to? And it's surprising that I'm not getting very much out of it compared to, because there's so many books he's written in the past year or two that I really loved. This one did have a few hints of humor that I liked, and a hint of some interesting plot twists near the end that I found interesting. I still find it weird that Thanos is being treated as if he's always been kind of an Eternals villain, and that he is perhaps an Eternal himself in some way. That's confusing to me, and it seems like an unnecessary change in, sometimes when they retrofit a character to have a new reason or origin in the Marvel Universe, it's really cool and plays out in some interesting ways, but I don't see what's interesting about this. But I'll keep getting it. I will drop Lady Baltimore. There's 3 more issues to go, and I'm just getting nothing out of this. I didn't like the first issue. I thought, well, maybe the second issue will grab me, because I really liked the old Baltimore series. This just seemed like a bunch of people who I can't tell who they are talking about fighting witches. There's a little bit of an interesting... There seems to be a backstory on this guy, that he's a priest who was part of the Inquisition, so he must be very old. If he was in the Baltimore stories, I forgot about him. So, yeah, I'm just not getting very much out of this at all, and I don't know what's gone wrong, because I used to love the way this same team wrote the Baltimore series. And then it turns out they also wrote Kojaraku the Skinner, a brand new, just 2-issue series, part of Tales from the Outerverse, sorry. And apparently, I looked it up, I guess Lady Baltimore's part of the Outerverse. I guess the Baltimore books were part of the Outerverse. And so were the Joe Golem books, or some Golem books, which I've never read. This one had the advantage, so I put it at number, number 9. It had the advantage of art that I liked quite a bit more by Peter Bergting. And he did some work on Baltimore, I believe, that I liked. And it has very nice coloring, too. I guess both books have nice coloring. This coloring is by Michelle Madsen. It's in the Dave Stewart kind of vein. And, but again, it's mostly a bunch of people fighting a bunch of witches, and the witches are really powerful and no one can kill them, except they call upon the spirit of this character, I guess the Skinner, who seems kind of like a Joan of Arc type of character, a woman who trained and somehow she can kill the witches. It's only 2 issues, so I guess I'll let it roll on my pull list and see how it goes. But I'm getting a bad vibe about this Outerverse thing, and maybe I don't want to pursue it, unfortunately, because I would like to see Dark Horse and Mike Mignola have another really good series on their hands. Speaking of really good series, I really like the first 2 volumes of Old Guard, and this is kind of like a pause between volumes, this Old Guard Tales Through Time, where we're getting a bunch of different creators doing short stories about the Old Guard. And this issue was just kind of so-so for me. So I put it in at number 8? 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 8. I'm going to lose track of the numbers. Maybe I'll edit this and put the numbers down below. So it had art that I liked, particularly the first story by one of the co-creators of the Old Guard, Leandro Fernandez, and great coloring by Miwa, Daniela Miwa. It was kind of a very simple story, a bit sort of oddly sentimental about an axe that this immortal has had throughout all her adventures. But of course, it's not really the same axe, but she considers it the same axe because she's replaced the parts of it one by one over the millennia. And it was an okay story. And then there's a story of the 2 gay characters whose names I can't remember. In fact, I can't remember the names of anyone in the Old Guard right now, which I feel bad about. But it's the 2 gay characters are in Nazi Germany, and they're going out for a night on the town, just trying to have a romantic date, and it doesn't go well thanks to the Nazis. Big surprise, right? Nazis and gay people don't mix well. But both these stories have kind of, well, A, you couldn't read them you wouldn't know who these characters are. You have to have read the Old Guard, I think. And B, it's kind of, they're stories that are just telling you how great, good things about our heroes. They're hagiographies, in a sense, to use a fancy word. That used to mean stories that were the lives of the saints, and now they use that term to mean kind of a biography of someone that is all about praising them. I don't know why I just heard that word in some history book I was listening to in an audiobook, so it stuck in my head. But so it's in this first issue anyway, it's just telling us how wonderful our heroes are. So there's not really conflict or there are conflict with the Nazis, but there's not a real dilemma for the characters to solve or anything like that. So it just was kind of okay. It makes a nice footnote to the real story. And I'll keep getting it because who knows what different creators will come up with in the next 5 issues. In at number 8, I'm putting Orphan and the 5 Beasts. And the whole issue revolves around a battle between the orphan, who I think is a female, and the first of the beasts, which is this giant thigh guy. And they have a long fight. Most of the issue is the fight. And for a while, I was starting to get bored. I mean, this coloring is really cool, but it's the same coloring on every page. The fight just goes on and on. But then suddenly things take a change when it seems like she has defeated him, split him in 2, And then something happens. I don't want to give it away. And he comes back for more fight. And it's so bizarre and crazy that I was suddenly enjoying this comic book a lot more. And there's also kind of a interesting little subplot about the outlaw gang who were his followers and their changing allegiances. So that part was interesting. I really do wish he would do something more with his colors. He's an incredible line artist. And that's why, most of us want James Stokoe because of his art. He's also the writer here and the letterer and the colorist. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next issue to see what wild things he'll come up with. But it did rank lower than I might have expected it to be because I did have that first half of the issue thinking maybe I'm just kind of bored with this. Another one that ranked a little lower because of expectations was Crimson Flower, which I guess I'm putting in at number 7. And still loving the Matt Lazinski art and the coloring by Bill Crabtree. The story, I already was sensing the story was not as much as I was hoping it would be from issue 1. But by issue 4, this final issue, it looks like, it just feels like kind of a forced surprise ending, a twist in the tale that I couldn't buy into very easily. And that came too easily, perhaps. So, yeah, I didn't hate it, but I'm just kind of left, I don't know. But I still had a lot of fun with this whole series, probably most of all because of the art. And this coming Wednesday, a new graphic novel by Matt Lazinski is coming out from Dark Horse. I think it's called Static. I think he may or may not have drawn it before he drew Crimson Flower, but it's another work of his in color. This was his first work I'd seen in color. He mostly did self-published stuff in black and white. So I'm excited to get more of his work. And that Static is written by himself, which this was the first work of his that I had read where he worked with another writer. Speaking of artist-writer, we got Ultra Mega from James Herron, issue number 2. It's a very oversized comic. I think there's 44 or 48 pages of art. It cost $8. I wish it wasn't square bound, but I guess that does make it feel like something fancier, more of an event. And he's the writer and the artist. He does have a colorist, Dave Stewart, who's considered one of the top colorists in the comic book industry. And he doesn't, the colors are great. And the art is great. And the story has a lot of great ideas. And I know other people are really loving this, but I, in the first issue, felt that the presentation of the story and the characters and the ideas was not ideal, that it just wasn't put together right, so it left me with a lot of question marks. And the question marks are adding up with the second issue. I basically have the same feeling now. I think we jumped ahead 10 years. And you can kind of figure things out as you plow through the story, but with just a little tweaking, it could have all been so much clearer and easier to get the significance of things. And I feel like, at least for a reader like me, the confusion may keep building up issue by issue. But on the other hand, I'm kind of intrigued because I can't quite see where this is going. It's not just a standard kaiju story. There's quite a bit more going on there. And we've got some small kaiju here. And I guess some people who either worship it or are brainwashed by it. We've got different use of remote control robots than you normally would get. So yeah, I'm still looking forward to this. And I feel like James Herron, this is one of his early, as far as I know, doing his own writing. He's doing quite a good job, or, in many aspects, like the ideas and the concepts and stuff and the characters. So if he keeps at writing, some really great, and he's such a great artist, some really great stuff could come up from him in future projects. So in at number 5, And these top 5 all should be number ones, basically. I am putting Usagi Yojimbo number 19, coming hot on the heels of issue 18. When does Stan Sakai take a break? The man's a machine. This is an excellent one and done. It ties into the overall themes of Usagi, that he is a ronin wandering the land because his master, Lord Mafume, but I think I've got the name wrong, was defeated and destroyed and killed. And so his followers no longer have a leader. So he's still obeying all the concepts of honor and the structure of his society, but he is a person who no longer has a place in that society. So he has an interesting sort of conflict. And the new character introduced here ties him back to that origin of him being a ronin in interesting ways. And I think creates a new character, even though tied to the past, who we will probably be seeing again eventually. So another piece in the tapestry of Usagi Yojimbo is added in. The colors are wonderful. So Usagi is always a breath of fresh air. I'm kind of starting to take it for granted. So these other books that got ahead of it, all of which also could be number one, perhaps I decide to rank them better because I got a little extra jolt of pleasure of the feeling of newness, as in Haha, where you don't know what to expect with every new issue. This is issue number 4. Like all of them, it's a one-shot story. It's not quite a horror story. It's definitely a surreal story. It's definitely a psychological portrait of several different people. This one is kind of a split-in-half story about a clown who magically got sucked into a balloon he was making at a boy's birthday party. And the other half of the story is about the boy and his family and is kind of a quieter story. And other than the fact that something went wrong at his birthday party, is very grounded in reality and is quite moving. Kind of a story, a quiet story really, of loss in families of different sorts. Loss, fathers who've run away, or loss of a wife in the case of the grandfather. This is definitely stuff that I will have to reread. I really enjoyed the art. Discovered another artist I'd never heard of, Patrick Horvath, who also did the colors. I presume that's watercolors. So this is definitely not for everybody. I can see people being very frustrated because the clown part of the story, the surreal part, really has no explanation. And if there's a thematic connection to the story of the boy and his family, it's very unexplained and very distant. In at number 3 is my favorite current post-apocalyptic book. There are so many post-apocalyptic books, and I think currently on the market. And I think for me, Resonant is the best of them. And it makes me glad that I haven't just said, I'm banning all post-apocalyptic books, because then I would have missed this comic. It has great art, great coloring, great writing, incredible pacing. It is slightly different concept of an apocalypse, kind of waves of psychosis travel through the world, making everyone kind of viciously crazy for short periods of time, where you might get killed. And it's the story of a father and his family who've been separated from each other, and the father's trying to get back to the kids. There's no mother. Presumably she died in one of the early waves. And the kids are struggling to survive. And along the way, it's a very fast read, and yet there's so much packed in here with all these different groups and how they respond to this literally crazy kind of apocalypse. And so in a sense, it gives us a lot of different views of humanity and what humanity is, good and bad, and how you explain things in the world, or how you embrace chaos. Fascinating read. There's just one more issue to go, and then it's already, the first trade is out, and then it'll be 2 trades and make a great read if that sounds appealing to you. Finally, in at number 2, an awesome book, should have been number 1 in any other week. The Many Deaths of Layla Starr by Ram V and Philip Andrade. Excellent art and color, excellent writing, very, very, I don't want to say derivative, very, very Sandman, Neil Gaiman inspired. Kind of, like, say you are inspired by superheroes and you want to write your own superhero comic. This reads like what a very talented person who was inspired by Neil Gaiman when he wanted to write his own Neil Gaiman type of comic would do. And it takes place in Mumbai, and it involves the gods that at least have kind of a Hindu vibe to them. I'm not sure if they're not I don't think they're the exact gods from the Hindu pantheon. But anyway, they have that Hindu Indian vibe, and the goddess of death, after an eternity of doing her job, has been let go. And that's how the adventures start. And she goes into a body of a woman who's recently committed suicide and brings it back to life. And really great read, really fun. But my only complaint is the font, which looks really cool on the page. But when you have to read a larger portion of it, the letters are just too pushed close together, and the stylized quality of them actually makes them harder to read. Like pages like this, that feeling where you can't skip down to the next line very easily or skip from word to word. Your brain is just taking a slight pause, maybe even unconsciously sometimes, to look at the line and figure out where the spaces between the words are. And it was a bad choice on the part of the letterer, in my opinion. The other thing I noted at first, in the first 3 pages, everything that, even stuff that should have been word balloons, rather than being sort of acted out in word balloons, was in captions. And at first I thought, oh no, this writer is going to kind of keep me distanced from the story throughout. But that turned out to just be part of the prologue, so to speak. And once we got into the proper action, most things are driven by dialogue, and very good dialogue. So then I thought, well, maybe that's kind of an interesting technique to, at the beginning, sort of hold us at a distance by using captions where you could have used word balloons. I don't know if that's the author's real intent or if he thought it through. But sometimes I feel like people, they used to use captions to write a lot of purple prose or fill in the backstory or stuff in comics. And now they'll use it instead of thought balloons or in other ways. And I think the best dialogue is still the best way. Dialogue bubbles is still the best way to draw me into that combination of words and pictures. By far, my top comic was Rain Like Hammers. I just love this to death. This is issue 4. The only bad thing about it is there's only one more issue to go. Each issue is like 56 pages long, I think. No ads, back to front story. This one contained some new characters, some new angles on the old characters, some, continuing that fully fleshed science fiction world idea and adding some new ideas to it, and some broader view of some of the cultural forces and an enforcer of those cultural forces out there. And by the end of this issue, I was like, wow, there actually was a lot of plot twists and turns in this book, but you don't feel it as you're going along. It feels lazy and moving at a, just wandering about and exploring things, but stuff is really going on here. And I loved all of it. It's obviously not for everybody. There's a certain kind of taste in both loving deep immersive sci-fi, being willing to go with this slower style, and also this kind of artwork. This is a book that I read 10 pages, I stop, and even though I'm loving it, I take my time with it because I don't want to miss stuff. You do have to focus and use your brain a bit to make sure you picked up a lot of details that seem like they are unimportant but then turn out to be important. But because of the way he's done it, I get great pleasure in, now that I've figured it out, in just sitting back and enjoying what he's doing and trying to take in all the details that I can see on the page. So can't wait to see how he's going to pull it all together in the 5th issue. There was one reference to the 1st issue. I don't know if he needs to go back to that 1st issue. I personally hope he comes back to this universe. And another cool thing is the last 4 pages here were kind of his diary. Each page kind of random things that he was thinking about or wanted to talk about. So one strip up here is about sleeping over at a girlfriend's house. On this page are different kinds of things he'd like to try in comic books. And then a random picture of a couch here. And then this page here is kind of key in the sense that he talks about the idea of forcing people to eat hot dogs when they just woke up, and that some comic books are like that. They try to stuff too much down your throat on the first pages. So he likes to start his comics with a nice, relaxing landscape. And I thought that was really interesting. I frankly wouldn't want all comics to do that, but it's kind of the opposite theory of the way the old kind of Stan Lee comics were done, where you have this huge in-your-face splash page that plunges you into the story. He's kind of easing you into each chapter of the story. I've worn out my throat. So thanks for hanging with me all the way through.